Hello, students. Welcome to class once again. So, today we'll be talking about frictional force. So, by the end of today's lesson, we should be able to define what frictional force is. We should be able to identify the factors affecting frictional forces. We should be able to identify the different types of frictional force and also cite various examples of friction. And finally, we should be able to identify ways of reducing friction. What is frictional force? This is the force generated by two surfaces that contact and slide against each other. The factors affecting frictional forces are the surface texture. Rough surfaces create more friction while smooth surfaces create less friction. Two, applied force. The amount of force you apply on an object affects the frictional forces. Three, angle and position of the objects in contact. Now, if an object is placed flat against another object, the frictional force is equal to the object's weight. But if they are sliding against each other, the frictional force is increased. And finally, the material interactions. Now, different materials have different friction levels. There are two main types of friction, the dry friction and the fluid friction. The dry friction is a friction that takes place between solid surfaces, while fluid friction is a friction that takes place between fluids and gases. So, there are four types of dry friction. The first is the static friction. This is a friction that is applied when an object is at rest. The second is rolling friction. This is a friction that is resisting the motion of a rolling object. The third is sliding friction. This is a friction created by two objects when they are sliding against each other. And finally, the fourth is kinetic friction. This is the friction that opposes the motion of an object that is already moving. So, let's look at static friction. This is a force that keeps an object at rest. Examples are papers on a tabletop, two, a towel hanging on a rack, and three, a car parked on a hill. So you notice all these objects are at rest, and then the friction it possesses at that point is static friction. So the next is kinetic friction. This is the friction possessed by an object that's already moving. So looking on the slide, you see a lawnmower. As he exerts force to move this lawnmower, you will notice that there's a resistance to its motion. And that resistance is what is caused by kinetic friction. Now, the next is the rolling friction. This is the force that opposes the motion of a rolling object. Imagine a bowling ball rolling on the ground. The rolling friction occurs as this ball surface interacts with the ground. So, just like I've said earlier, the sliding friction is experienced when two objects are sliding against each other. An example is when a child is sliding down through a slide in a park, just like the picture on the slide illustrates. Another example is when we rub our both hands together, that's we rub both hands against each other. You notice that the friction between our palms creates heat. Now, the fluid friction. This is friction experienced in fluids and gases. Imagine walking through water. The resistance encountered while moving through a fluid can be water, in this case, is fluid friction. So there are ways of reducing friction. Some of these ways include one, using lubricants, two, using ball bearings or spools, especially at movable parts of machines. And finally, smoothing the surfaces in contact. Now, having listened up to this very point of this lesson, do you think friction is useful to us in any way? And also, can you identify four ways in Which friction is beneficial to me and you? All right, we have come to the end of today's lesson. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you learned a lot. See you again in my next class. Bye.